world, yeah.
Welcome to My Generation, the show that explores questions related to politics, economics, and moral issues that impact Canadians in their 20s and 30s. Climate change has been an ongoing debate for decades, but the conversation has shifted away from is it happening or not to whether or not climate change is accelerated by humans or if it's a natural occurring process and we're just along for the ride. Qualified scientists on both sides of the discussion, looking at the same data, can draw drastically different conclusions on the matter. And while I'm sure the truth is complex, we wanted to explore what the different arguments are. We'll get into the numbers in a bit, but it's an emotionally charged discussion. So how do you feel about climate change when someone brings it up in conversation? What's your initial reaction? Karolina, I want to throw this one to you.
Yeah, I'm always happy to discuss it and kind of talk about it. And I actually rarely people talk about it in day-to-day life, to be honest.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think people are too focused on their own lives and the issues that are, imminent to them and not really talking about great big topics.
It's also really polarized. A lot of people don't want to. It's another political issues that people don't really want to talk about.
Hence why we're talking about it on the show.
Yep.
Chris, do you think it's something that people just push off to the side because they just don't think it concerns them?
I think there's that. It's not a problem for tomorrow, right? So it's one of those things we push off. And then the other thing I think is a lot of people are just woefully uneducated on the topic. Like we hear so much in the news, but it's all just kind of headline reading. No one really knows what's going on, how things are changing. So yeah, I think people just don't feel confident talking about it as well.
What are the dinner roundtable conversations at your place about climate change?
It's more so about how we're combating climate change. It's not so much climate change in general. It's more so where taxpaying money is going to fight climate change and if that's an effective spend of our money and how that's affecting all of our well-being.
Now, we asked the people on the street, as always, so let's see what they have to say. We'll jump into it. What are your opinions on climate change? How do you feel about it? Is it real, fake?
I think that we're kind of
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How so?
I don't know. I think that we kind of have to get our together. Obviously, I'm not one to speak.
I mean, yeah, but I also feel like it's just like the natural course of history.
What can we do to stop climate change?
I mean, we are turning to EV, electric vehicles, but I think that's more harmful for us. In African countries, kids are mining for cobalt.
We don't have the power and the tools to make real change right now.
They always advocate for it starts at the individual, and I'm all about that, but in reality, it's like all the big companies that are greedy and that are doing it.
If you look at countries like Denmark, they're using their bikes all the time. We rely so much on transportation, finding better ways to use it.
Canada was less than 1.6% of our global emissions to greenhouse gases. Does what we do really matter?
I mean, we're a small percentage, but all percentages matters.
A lot of hot takes on the topic, but I'm curious, what stood out to you, Bianca?
I really like the girl. That's like most of us. We all agree with some certain topics, but we continue to live our lives.
Interesting. Do you think it's as hot as what people were saying on the panel?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, climate change and global warming is a topic they need to know, but I think the one that stood out the most was that girl for sure.
We all have a little bit of hypocrisy,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Just a little bit. What I found interesting was somebody, one of the gentlemen spoke on mining cobalt and EV. Is that something that's we talk about?
Well, I mean, we see a lot of subsidies going to these electric vehicles, people buying electric vehicles, and this massive push. And we look at a place like China, for example, that has a lot of EVs, and air pollution actually got worse in China as EVs increased because it caused them to fire up more coal-fired power plants. So when we're thinking about electric vehicles, we need to also consider how we're getting that electricity to power the vehicles. It's not necessarily, oh, everyone has an EV, now we're clean. Because if you're firing up, in China's case, coal-fired plants, you're releasing way more carbon than you would have if you had gas-powered vehicles.
Now, everybody talked about, EV and all this kind of stuff, but nobody talked about windmills or, water generation for electricity. Like, nobody talked about that stuff. Is that something that's a hot take? Or?
I just saw a commercial on a Porsche that's going to come out that runs on water.
Get out of here.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd look into that, double check, but yeah, I saw that. It's coming.
Okay, real quick, Chris. Is it naturally occurring or is it man-made? What do you think?
I think climate change, we're accelerating some aspects of it. I also think that the Earth, there must be some sort of cyclical nature just based on the history of, we know we've had an ice age and things like that.
The climate will climate.
Exactly.
Climate will climate. We'll unpack that more in just a minute. Let's get into it.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world.